Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Ross and Wizzy's Fan Fiction Power Hour. And if it's your first time, welcome in.
Whose
This
first
is
time
the
would it
show
be? Who
where,
hasn't seen this?
um, I once asked one of my favorite actors, Don Cheadle, if he had seen it. And he said he just hadn't have the time yet. Um, but
Man,
he plans on getting around to it at some point. That's what I hear. In the series, I, Ross Pitt, subject Wizzy Puff, he's right here, you heard him already, to fan fictions, My Little Pony fan fiction specifically, but maybe someday we'll get to other ones, who knows?
ooh,
So today, we're going to be reading Why Pinkie Pie Smiles by Anonymous Pegasus, which is a nice little name. I have a YouTube channel that I don't use called Anonymous Griffin.
I was
So
just
that's
thinking of that.
nice. And it was originally titled Anonymous Griffin because of My Little Pony. So, what a
Ah,
coincidence.
I thought griffins were a species of My Little Pony, but it's been so long that I've forgotten. Are they horses?
No,
Are they seahorses?
no,
Mm,
those are hippogriffs.
hippogriffs are seahorses?
Yeah, you see, they turned into sea ponies to get away from the Storm King.
Oh, who's the Storm King?
He's the main villain in My Little Pony the movie. It's a whole thing. Griffins are like half bird, half cat.
Half pain in a neck. Pain in the neck.
And you would be right about that because griffins suck.
What's so bad about griffins, huh?
Uh, Everything. They're rude. They're abrasive. They eat puppies.
What?
No, they don't eat puppies. Probably. It's been a while since I've actually seen the show or any episode involving a griffin, but I assume that's a lie. So, no, don't worry, everybody. They don't eat puppies. But if they did,
Whew.
I'm sure they would be rightfully called out for it.
There would be ample protesting.
Yes. They probably are carnivores.
Oh. Well, they do seem like birds of prey.
Yeah.
Man, a griffin could swoop a pony.
We have actually read stories involving griffins before. We read one with Gallus. He's a griffin.
Yeah, I remember. Was that Discord Teaches Philosophy?
It was Discord Teaches Philosophy. Wizzy.
Ah, good story.
Ah, that story was so long ago. Gotta read the sequels at some point. But maybe we won't. Anyways, Why Pinkie Pie Smiles by Anonymous Pegasus. That's our cue to read it now. All right, so I'm gonna read it because it's a sad story, and I read it when it's a sad story.
And I bring the tissues.
Okay, Chapter 1. And that's the chapter title. That's not me saying that this is the first chapter out of several. The single chapter here just so happens to be called Chapter 1. Okay. Pinkie Pie splayed her ears backwards as she walked in careful step beside her father down the whitewashed hospital corridors. 3 balloons shone brightly on the little filly's flank, their cheerful colors seeming muted under the lifeless and sterile glow of the hospital's fluorescent lights. The young Earth pony lagged behind for a moment, glancing down at her cutie mark as if to regain some measure of cheerfulness despite the cheer-sapping atmosphere and the disinfectant scented air. Realizing she'd been left behind by the tall stallion, the little pink filly stopped staring at her cutie mark and hurried to catch up. Nurses passed the father and daughter every now and again, dressed in their uniforms, stethoscopes around their necks as they entered and left the rooms of sick ponies. There were all kinds of ponies in the rooms. Unicorns, earth ponies, pegasi, young, old, male, female. It was an ordered chaos, with nurses treating patients with problems ranging from mere injuries and sprains to full-blown sickness or disease. The constant beep of heart monitors grew and faded out over and over again as the pair of earth ponies passed by open doorways.
Father, how far is it to Mother's room?
Pinkie asked in a hushed voice. It's not that far now, Pinkie, her father said, his tone as quiet as his daughter's. The natural aura of the Ponyville Hospital demanded whispers, and the grim faces of the doctors and nurses squeezed from the building whatever happiness might have lingered. Nodding silently, Pinkie continued along in her father's hoofsteps, past the rooms. Her sisters were still back at home, babysitted. Babysitted? Is that how you say? Is that the word for that?
Babysat?
I would say it's probably babysat, but it says babysitted here, so that's what we're going for. Babysitted by an earth pony from a neighboring rock farm, while Pinkie and her father visited her sick mother. The mare had managed to hurt herself pretty badly while moving rocks around the farm, and the doctors thought she might have broken her foreleg. So she was stuck at the hospital for a week while she recovered. After several more hallways, Pinkie and her father reached their destination. Her father stepped through the open door, moving over to the bed where her mother lay. The mare's foreleg was in a cast, suspended from a wire from the ceiling for support and to keep her from moving it too much. Hold on one second. When was this made? Okay, wow, this is old.
Is it?
This was in 2012. Right before I joined the fandom.
Right before the end of the world.
Yeah. Oh, man, you remember when the world ended?
Yeah.
I was there.
You were the cause.
Well, they didn't give me the ice cream.
They were out.
Then they shouldn't have been out. After several more hallways, Pinkie and her father reached their destination. Her father stepped through the open door, moving over to the bed where her mother lay. The mare's foreleg was in a cast, suspended from a wire from the ceiling for support and to keep her from moving it too much. Pinkie moved to stand at the end of the bed, lifting her forelegs onto it and peering at her mother as her father gingerly hugged his wife and nuzzled into her neck with a query. Well, what did the doctor say? Pinkie's mother launched into an explanation that went straight over the young pony's head. Pinkie lost interest in the medical jargon and instead moved over to the window. The room was on the second floor of the hospital, giving a relatively good view of the hospital grounds. Out the window, the curious filly could see the verdant expanse of the hospital grounds. The various paths through sweeping decorative gardens were dotted with park benches, where patients could rest, gazing out over the soothingly inviting greenery. Off in the distance, a lone Pegasus colt lounged under an apple tree and watched the horizon. He looked to be about Pinkie's own age, young enough that he didn't even have a cutie mark.
Mother, may I go play in the garden?
Pinkie asked hopefully, turning to her parents.
Yes, dear. Go have fun.
That's not Pinkie Pie's mother's voice.
Well, I don't know what her voice is. Is it like Applejack? Is Applejack her mother?
No. Applejack's her cousin, Dingus.
Oh,
No,
yeah, I forgot.
Yeah. No. Her mother and father, as well as the rest of the Apple family, are pretty, bland. Not Apple family, Pie family. They're pretty bland. Because, grew up on a rock farm.
Oh. Yeah, the three farms. Pears, apples, and rocks.
Yeah. Although the rock farm is actually supposed to be pretty far away, which is why I was checking when this was uploaded to begin with. Because I guess you wouldn't have, maybe not have known that this was, the rock farm was well out of the way.
So that means that the person who made this didn't actually make this with the whole rock farm and Pinkie's family in mind?
They did. It definitely mentioned rock farms and stuff. But just didn't know where the rock farm was. But it's supposed to be like a while away from Ponyville, but this takes place in Ponyville.
Oh, okay.
Pinkie's mother said before returning her attention back to her husband. Pinkie beamed, bouncing out of the room and towards the stairs. She bounced down them to the ground floor, and then out the front door and into the garden. The filly amused herself at first by chasing butterflies, batting towards them playfully with her hooves. But eventually, tiny Pinkie Pie doing that. But eventually, her curiosity was tugged back towards the lone Pegasus. Overcome by curiosity, she made her way over towards him, bouncing and smiling.
Hiya!
Pinkie proclaimed, planting her rear in the grass nearby and waving a hoof at the lone Pegasus to catch his attention.
What you looking at?
The Pegasus blinked a little bit as he turned to regard the pink filly. His expression was, well, she didn't know how to describe it. He didn't look angry or sad or annoyed, but he wasn't happy either. His expression seemed to indicate perpetual ambivalence. He almost looked drained, like her mother and father did after a very long day of work. I'm looking at the sky, the Pegasus said after a few moments of deliberation, laying his head on his forehooves and staring back at the sky once more. Pinkie followed the line of the colt's eyes and tried to discern what was so interesting about that particular patch of sky. Finding nothing of interest there at all, she turned to the colt, extending a hoof towards him in greeting.
I'm Pinkie.
The Pegasus paused once more, eyes sliding over to regard her with a curious look. He reached out tentatively with his own hoof to shake hers. I'm Sunshine. It's nice to meet you, Pinkie.
Oh, so it's sort of like the dwarves. His name is Sunshine because he's so bland and sad.
Yes, you got it. Though, on that note, yeah, My Little Pony actually does have a sort of dwarf naming scheme here, doesn't it? Something to think about. The colt's gaze rose back to the sky. He had paused at the word nice, as though trying to summon up the courage to say the word. Wearing a mildly confused expression, Pinkie lay down as well, an ear perking at the Pegasus.
Why you staring at the sky?
I'm imagining that I can see Cloudsdale from here, he sighed, shaking his head for a moment.
Cloudsdale is too far away, silly.
Actually, you oftentimes can see Cloudsdale near Ponyville.
Oh?
Although I suppose it is a moving city, so maybe it's just not the time of year for Cloudsdale to be around Ponyville, but what's to say?
Yeah, young Pinkie was actually really good at cloud mapping.
Pinkie giggled. Sunshine cringed slightly at the filly's words. It took her a few moments to realize she might have said something wrong, and she winced at her thoughtlessness. Yeah, Pinkie, shut the before she hastily amended.
But I bet it's a wonderful place.
The Pegasus rested his head dejectedly, back onto his forehooves. His tone was bitter as he admitted, I don't remember it.
It's been a long time since you were there.
Pinkie asked sympathetically. A year, I think, Sunshine said with a sad sigh. Pinkie canted her head curiously at that.
But why so long?
But why?
But why?
It's a reference to the last Pinkie Pie fic we did, One Heart Swarming Eve. If you guys want to go listen to that, it's probably one of my favorite episodes.
It was really good. Did that one have Chase?
Yes.
Ah.
Chasing Dreams is his name. You'll figure it out in the fan fiction, though, guys. Speaking of you'll figure it out in the fan fiction, though, guys, you should also go read this fan fiction by yourself before we ruin it for you. Or if not, go into the description and give it a like. I keep forgetting to say that at the beginning. Wiz, you've got to remind me of these things.
Yeah, you gotta remind me to remind. Thank you for reminding me to remind you.
If you could remind me of that, that would be great. Anyways, I've been really, really sick, he explained.
For a year?
Pinkie asked, aghast. The colt nodded in response. Don't worry, though. I'm getting better. The doctors say I'll be leaving in a few days. This mortal coil in a few days.
No!
I don't know if that's what happens at the end of this, but I mean, it is tagged sad.
Oh, God.
Pinkie smiled.
That's good then. You'll be able to see your family at Cloudsdale.
Yes, I'll be able to see them all.
It sounds so
Oh, no.
ominous.
He replied, a strange note to his tone, as he rested his head back on his forehooves. His family's dead. He's going to heaven.
Uh-huh. He's going to Star Clan. That's for all you Warriors fans out there.
I don't know what that means.
Ask your brother.
He replied, a strange note to his tone as he rested his head back on his forehooves.
So what do you do for fun, Sunshine?
Pinkie inquired. Fun? He asked, an eye blinking open to peer at her. I'm afraid I don't get to have much fun.
Oh, I didn't even actually realize that he was going to be like this. Like, your voice was perfect.
Yeah, I planned this.
You already read this story, but I found this by searching.
As I said earlier, I have not already read this story, but I just expected him to be like this. So obvious, if you read between the lines.
Oh, come on, you must do something for fun.
She squeaked, shaking her head vehemently. She started to tick off a number of activities that she had found fun in the past.
Board games? Dress up in silly clothes? Chase balloons?
Chase.
Play with the animals?
Chase.
Sunshine shook his head at each suggestion, sighing as he watched her.
But, aren't you terribly bored?
She demanded. A dismissive sound left the Pegasus. Sometimes I just fantasize about flying when I'm bored.
But why?
But why?
I should have done that.
I don't know why that specific joke I remember more than anything else we've said in this show.
I forgot about that until you mentioned it. Is that just like something that Pinkie Pie always says in the show?
Nope.
Because they make her say it in these fics a lot.
Just a coincidence. She asked, looking at his wings for a moment.
You have wings. Why not just fly?
The doctors say I'm not strong enough.
Don't listen to those doctors.
But also, like, Scootaloo can't fly. She has wings, just saying.
Oh, why can't she fly?
She's disabled.
What? What happened to her wings?
They just don't grow in that good.
Aww.
I can't remember if that's like an actual thing in the show, but she never does fly.
Oh, I thought they would actually like have a episode about that like has that as a whole analogy.
They do say some stuff similar to that in one of the best episodes from season 4 or 5, I believe. But yeah, ultimately no. She never really does fly. She's also got lesbian aunts, by the way. Did you know that?
Her aunts are Minty and what's her name?
No, but I don't know who you're talking about with the what's her name.
Who are the other lesbians?
Bon Bon and Lyra?
Yeah. One of them's mint green, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
At least you got that.
I love Minty, I gotta say. Best pony.
Ugh, I know, right? She really is from G3. Gosh, fucking great. And the last time I tried, I hurt myself pretty bad, he admitted with a sad shake of his head.
That's no fun at all,
she said with a wrinkled nose.
You're getting better, right? You said it yourself. If you're getting sent back to your family, you'll be able to fly soon too, right?
Sunshine looked thoughtful for a few moments. I'm sure of it. I'll be able to fly with my mother and my father. His parents are dead.
Oh, you just know that he's like grinning and winking at Pinkie as he's saying this.
That's not how I visioned it, but sure.
Oh, God.
It's been a really long time you could fly, hasn't it?
She asked sympathetically.
I've never flown myself, but I bet it's a super duper experience.
It's one of the best things there is. Which is why being a Pegasus is the best. Freaking cool, man.
Yeah, but I'd rather be a unicorn.
Yeah, well, you can be a stuck-up bastard, Wizzy. I don't care. I'd rather be free.
Well, I'd rather be expensive.
Wizzy, there's no price on you.
There isn't?
No.
I'm worthless?
Yeah.
Aww.
Yeah, nearly 30 minutes we've been recording. Long episode, long episode. The Pegasus responded. His wings gave a slight quiver, as though aching to lift him into the sky. Pinkie fell silent a moment at that. The silence was broken as a voice echoed through the garden. Pinkie Pie's ears pricked up at the sound of her name. She lifted her head to see her father standing at the front door of the hospital, calling for her to come so they could return home.
Well, it was nice meeting you, Sunshine,
she said with a smile.
I might see you next time I'm here.
Bye-bye, Pinkie, he said, lifting a hoof in a careless farewell, his eyes on the horizon once more.
Flipping his emo hair back in the wind.
It was 2 days before Pinkie and her father returned to the hospital. This time, Pinkie had come prepared. She had a deck of cards, a game of Monopoly, the real estate game, and a colorful red balloon she had hoof-picked and drawn smiley faces over. As Pinkie's father moved off to go and see her mother, the filly peeled off into the gardens. She bounded over a flower bed and bounced over to Sunshine, who was in the same spot under the tree, head still on his hooves. Help me, Pinkie. They've glued me to this tree. For all the evidence available, the colt might not even have moved since yesterday. Pinkie bounced right on over to him. Beaming while holding the balloon string in her mouth, she plopped herself down next to the Pegasus. She immediately extended her mouth to offer the balloon to him, while saying around the mouthful of string,
Hi, Sunshine!
Hi, Pinkie, he said, raising an eyebrow at all the balloon. Oh, God, all the balloon. What's that for? The colt sounded tired. Pinkie noticed, like he'd had a late night. She grinned, pushing her nose towards him to make him accept it, the accept balloon.
That sentence. To accept it. The accept balloon. It's like the balloon is called the accept balloon.
Sentence structure, not always fanfiction authors' best, fanfiction authors' strong suits.
Yeah, but I try and look around that.
It's for you!
The Pegasus blinked, his ears perking, looking bewildered. After a moment, he took the balloon string in his mouth, before neatly tying it around a hoof so he wouldn't lose it. Aw, that's nice. Tilting his head at her. Thanks,
And I brought cards and a board game,
she said with a grin, holding up the deck of cards. Pinkie ended up staying with Sunshine for most of the afternoon, playing cards and Monopoly with him. But there was something wrong, something amiss. He never smiled, not once. He was cursed to never smile.
His mouth was turned upside down so that whenever he smiled, it would look like a frown.
That's why he's at the hospital. He managed to beat her with a full barn in poker, with 3 alicorns and a pair of unicorns. But the corners of his mouth didn't even twitch as he laid down his winning cards.
I don't think he's playing Twilight's Secret shipfic folder right.
Yeah. It was like all the happiness had been sucked out of him. He was a very gloomy Pegasus for some pony who would be seeing his family in Cloudsdale soon. Yeah.
Real soon. Yeah.
And with a name like Sunshine, too. It's an ironic name.
That's what parents do to their kids. They give them ironic names.
She was determined to make Sunshine smile. She watched him carefully during Monopoly, made jokes, made faces, even deliberately let him win, but still no smile. Maybe it's because you deliberately let him win. Nobody likes to win like that.
Yeah, if anything, you just made him die quicker, Pinkie.
Yeah, great job, Pinkie. Nothing. And then it was time for her to go again. Pinkie gave a sad little shake of her head and pushed the deck of cards towards him with her nose.
You can have those, Sunshine. You need them more than I do.
Ooh, sick burn. She's telling me he needs practice.
The pink pony then wrapped her hooves around him in a hug, giving his cheek an innocent kiss, and then admitting,
You're the first friend I've ever had, Sunshine.
Aww. Oh, man.
That's gonna make it all the sadder when he dies.
Yep. The Pegasus looked at her for a long moment, blinking once, and opened his mouth to say something. He was cut off by Pinkie's father calling her name again. Pinkie collected up her game of Monopoly and bounced over to her father to return home again, waving a hoof back at the Pegasus. Sunshine peered down at the deck of cards, and then up at the balloon, with the smiley faces all over it. He laid his head back on his hooves and watched the horizon. Another 2 days passed, and it was time for Pinkie and her father to return to the hospital for another visit to her mother. She was supposedly getting out of the hospital after they ran just a few more tests, and this time she was armed for a smile war. Her arsenal consisted of party poppers, balloons, streamers, and ribbons. But the crown jewel of her armament was the cake, a giant white and pink vanilla cake with a giant beaming sun drawn on it, wearing a pair of chocolate glasses with radiant sunbeams so wide they touched the edges. It was frosted, decorated, and perfectly baked. If that didn't put a smile on Sunshine's face, then nothing would. Armed for smiles, Pinkie bounced towards the apple tree where she was sure her new friend would be. A quick glance around the garden, however, proved that he was nowhere to be found. It took a fair amount of asking around, but eventually she found him in his room, in the children's ward. The sharp smell of antiseptic made her feel uneasy, and the hushed voices, interspersed with the steady beep of the monitoring machines, was such a change from the bird song or the rustle of wind through the trees. The Pegasus was lying in bed on his side, looking as tired as ever. There was an intravenous drip in one foreleg, and a machine hooked up to him, beeping in time with his heartbeat. He was facing away from the door, so Pinkie took the obvious opportunity to surprise him, sneaking up to the side of the bed, and then planting both hooves on the edge of it, going, "Boo!" The Pegasus recoiled, rolling over and flailing at the pink pony for a moment before he realized what had happened. And then he had a heart attack and died. Thanks, Pinkie.
Oh.
Great job.
And she smiles because of this.
I guess he never really told you that he had heart problems, but, well, still wasn't okay to do.
Yeah,
Killed
true.
someone, Pinkie. Great job. He rolled his eyes for a moment and bopping her on the nose with a hoof very gently before saying warmly, "Hi, Pinkie."
Hi, Sunshine. I brought you a present.
She declared with a grin, holding aloft the cake. The Pegasus blinked and peered warily at the pink box for a moment. It isn't dolls, is it?
No, silly, that would be gay.
Pinkie giggled, shaking her head and pushing the box up onto the bed.
Open it and see.
Sunshine looked down at the box cautiously. He opened it up, blinking at the large, brightly decorated cake. Pinkie was disheartened when she didn't see a smile, inquiring quietly,
Why don't you smile? Don't you like it?
"What?" the Pegasus asked, his expression confused.
You don't smile. I've never seen you smile. Ever.
Pinkie said, sounding defeated. She then raised a hoof at him, before stating,
You have to smile for me before you can eat the cake.
Sunshine stared at her for a long moment. He looked down at the cake and then back up at her, blinking once. "Why do you want to see me smile?"
Because you're my first friend. I never meet anyone really. On the rock farm, there are no ponies my age there except my sisters, and they're, well, family. And you're my first friend who isn't family. So if I don't make you smile, I failed.
Man, you know what would be really sad?
What?
If he died and didn't smile.
And now she has to smile to make up for it? That's gonna be it.
Yeah, we figured you out, Anonymous Pegasus.
Oh.
She leaned right in close until her nose bumped against his own.
Are you going to let me fail, Sunshine?
Well, you failed a lot yesterday.
Ooh.
The Pegasus stared at her for another few moments, blinking once or twice and shaking his head. "I don't want you to fail, but I don't have a whole lot to smile for,"
You have heaps to smile about.
she declared. "I really don't," the Pegasus said, hesitantly, with a sad shake of his head.
But you're getting better.
She said, grinning and then pointing out.
And you'll get back to your family in Cloudsdale?
The Pegasus was quiet for a few moments. Pinkie waited expectantly, but a smile was still not forthcoming as he admitted, I guess you're right.
Then you have the most important thing of all,
She said, leaning in close. Sunshine peered up at her curiously as he heard the serious tone in her voice. Which is...
cake.
Pinkie, you can't be so forward talking about someone's rear end like that.
Pinkie declared, scooping up some frosting and then spreading a long line of pink icing across his cheek. Sorry, with the whole rear end thing you were saying. Mixed with the cheek.
I wasn't even thinking.
Spreading a long line of pink icing across his cheek with a happy giggle before he could get away. The Pegasus made a face, trying to push her away, only succeeding in rubbing a hoof against her very weakly.
Aw.
He was very gentle and careful not to hurt her, but he could if he wanted to.
I'm not sure.
Let me actually just start that again. He was very gentle and careful not to hurt her, Pinkie noticed. But that didn't stop her from taking advantage of the situation. Scooping up more frosting to add to his face and chest, she smeared it across him with a happy smile, giggling all the while.
Ha 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 ha.
Sunshine tried weakly to push her away for a moment, before scooping some of the ice cream from his chest. He was about to plunge it into her frizzy mane, before deciding better of it, and instead scraping it across her neck in a messy trail. It wasn't long before the two ponies were covered in pink icing, and the cake was a mess. Pinkie grinned at Sunshine. Sunshine smiled back. All was right with the world.
Yo, she got that smile.
Yeah. But he's still gonna die.
Nah. It's gonna be like, why Pinkie smiles is because Sunshine didn't die.
Pinkie's mother was due to be discharged from the hospital that day. Pinkie insisted on going there one last time so she could say goodbye to Sunshine before he went back to Cloudsdale. Once more, he wasn't outside under the apple tree, and so she bounced on down to his room happily, holding her Ponopoly set so she could have one last game with her first ever friend. She hadn't even reached the doorway when she realized that something was wrong. The air felt different. Somehow, she knew something was off. Off in a bad way. Tentatively, she peeked around the doorway. Sunshine had a mask on his face, a rattling sound reverberating through it, apparently feeding him oxygen. The machines around him beeped intermittently, and a nurse was sitting beside his bed, crying silently. Pinkie blinked, watching for a moment before Sunshine caught sight of her. She lifted a hoof to wave, but instead of greeting her, the colt's eyes widened, and he waved a hoof frantically at the nurse. He rasped something to her through the mask, and then pointing at Pinkie before coughing heavily. The nurse nodded gently and slipped around to the door, stepping out of it and closing it gently behind her. She turned towards the young pink pony, her eyes red and her tone thick. I'm sorry, honey, but you can't visit him now,
What? But I'm his friend.
Pinkie said, stamping a hoof.
And Mama is leaving here today, so it's my last chance to say goodbye.
A look of sympathy found a place in the nurse's face as she leaned down to be on Pinkie's level, shaking her head. I'm sorry, honey. I'll say goodbye to him for you, okay?
No!
Pinkie yelled, pushing past the nurse, kicked open the door to Sunshine's room, and hurried in before the nurse could react. She bounded to the colt's bed, quickly putting it between her and the nurse. Pinkie scowled at the nurse from the protective barricade of Sunshine's bed, then glanced up at the shocked Pegasus.
She said I couldn't see you. But I can see you just fine. I'm not blind.
The Pegasus...
I added that part.
You did add that part.
I'm so creative.
You are. The Pegasus stared at the filly for a moment, pressing at her with a hoof very weakly, as though to push her away.
You don't want to be my friend anymore?
She asked, her eyes starting to water, ears splaying backwards, wearing a hurt expression. A racking coughing fit took the Pegasus, and he shook his head vehemently in between hard coughs. He wheezed for a moment. The inside of his mask was flecked with red. He lifted a hoof to remove his mask, and Nurse moved over to stop him, looking distraught. Sunshine, you need the mask. The Pegasus shook his head again, taking several long breaths. Turning to Pinkie, he gave her a weak smile. Don't cry, Pinkie, he rasped, and Pinkie was shocked to hear how weak and breathless his words were.
But you want me to leave?
Pinkie growled.
I brought you Monopoly and everything. Is this how you treat your friends?
Aw, that's so sad.
Man. Ugh. Sunshine stared at her for a long moment, helpless to answer. He shook his head, holding the mask back up to his mouth as he began to wheeze once more. He took several long breaths, his eyes locked on her own, before lowering it to speak, panting. I don't want you to see me like this. I don't want you to be here when it happens.
When what happens?
Pinkie asked, bewildered. She poked the colt accusingly.
Hey, I thought you were getting better.
You little shit, you lied to me. The Pegasus tried to answer, but another coughing fit interrupted his words. The nurse slipped around and gently secured the mask around his face, checking his monitors and then turning to Pinkie, her voice soft. There's something Sunshine hasn't told you.
But why?
Damn it, Pinkie.
Like what?
I'm sorry. I wanted to do it once more.
Understandable.
Like what? He's going to be stuck here for a little bit longer?
She asked.
Oh, wait. I messed that completely up.
Like what? He's going to be stuck here a lot longer?
Yeah, you did mess that up.
Basically antonyms.
She asked, putting two and two together. The coughing, the lack of smiling, everything. He really wasn't getting better. He had been lying about it. The nurse shook her head sadly, lifting a hoof to gently stroke through Pinkie's mane as she murmured, He's dying. Sunshine cringed and shook his head rapidly, his voice wavering as he said, No, I'm fine.
Is it true?
Pinkie demanded in a low tone. The Pegasus wilted under the filly's stern gaze, and his eyes lowered. There was a long pause before he gave a slow, gentle nod. Pinkie could feel tears welling up in her eyes as she shook her head rapidly.
No, you're lying, or your family would be here.
The nurse gave a strangled noise, halfway between a helpless sob and a whine. I'm the closest family that he has, honey. He's an orphan.
Yo? We called it, though?
Yeah. The filly lifted a hoof to push at the Pegasus gently, feeling hot tears start to cascade down her cheeks.
You can't be dying. You told me you were getting better.
Can't believe people would just lie like that. Like, that's rude.
Right? You think someone would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
Man, he deserves to die.
Whoa! Step too far.
Yeah, but also it's not a real story.
Yeah, it is. What are you talking about? Sunshine's a real pony.
Oh man, I'm sorry, I've made a terrible, grave mistake. I would like to retract some statements that I've made. Sunshine gave her a hurt look, his ears pinning back, pulling his mask away so he could speak, gently resting a hoof against her cheek to try and reassure her. Because you never treated me like I was sick. You were always smiling. No one ever smiles around me anymore. Please stop crying, Pinkie. I don't want you to cry. Well, to be fair, you never told her that you were that sick, so...
can't really blame her for crying, man.
The Pegasus's leg shook slightly with the effort of stroking Pinkie's cheek. It drifted down slightly and then slipped off completely onto the bed. Sunshine was just too weak to hold it up against her cheek anymore. Pinkie moved to stand closer so he didn't have to stretch, feeling her tears splashing down onto the covers. As she watched the Pegasus, she realized now, dying in front of her very eyes.
Well, I mean, everyone's like dying in front of your eyes, technically.
Dude, that's so deep. Pinkie, smile for me, please. Sunshine pleaded.
God, he's doing that sexist thing guys do where they tell random women to smile.
Man, we are butchering this story, aren't we?
I'm sorry. Oh, those poor listeners who are just trying to listen to a dramatic story.
You should have read it yourself. And then come back here and listen to it, but no. Sunshine pleaded, his eyes gazing up to her own imploringly.
But it hurts.
Oh man, you think it hurts you? I'm on the verge of tears, by the way. I'm not being affected by these jokes that we're saying.
Wow, you've been laughing a lot, haven't you?
Oh, just so much laughing. Pinkie protested, choking back sobs and then wrapping the Pegasus in her hooves, burying her nose against his neck.
Don't go, Sunshine.
The Pegasus shook his head for a moment, struggling weakly against. He managed to push her away just slightly with the tiny amount of strength he could muster. He leaned up to rub his nose gently against hers. Smile for me, Pinkie. Please. Pinkie bit back the sobs, trying to escape, and pulled her lips onto a smile for the Pegasus, watching him. But she couldn't stop the tears still streaming freely down her cheeks. There was a noise at the door, and Pinkie turned to see her parents standing there looking in, obviously having come looking for her.
Sunshine is sick.
Okay, well, we got a 2:30 appointment to go to, so...
Could you hurry it up?
She explained to them thickly. The two ponies looked at the scene for a long moment before Pinkie's father gently steered her mother away from the room and towards some seats to wait for the filly to say goodbye. The pink pony turned back towards the Pegasus, a smile fixed in place for him. She had to smile for him. He was dying, and he wanted to see her smile. Soft, monotonous, droning echoing from the heart monitor froze her in place, though. Pinkie's smile fell flat as she dissolved into racking sobs as she wrapped her hooves around the limp form of the Pegasus, her tears falling onto his chest and neck. The nurse flicked off the machine and then gently pulled the filly away from the heartbreakingly still form of Sunshine, wrapping her hooves around the little pony in a hug. The tears of the two ponies mingled as Pinkie sobbed, mourning for the loss of her first friend. I looked after Sunshine for 6 months now, the nurse said, squeezing Pinkie soothingly. And I never knew him to smile once. You made him smile before he passed. That's something to be proud of.
Then why does it hurt so much?
Pinkie asked between broken sobs, staring helplessly up at the nurse. Because it hurts, honey. It always hurts, she murmured, soothing the pony. The nurse pulled away for a moment, grabbing a small container and taking it over to the sobbing pony, opening it up and pulling out a small piece of paper inside. Sunshine wrote this for you earlier. He didn't want you here when he passed. He didn't want to see you sad, she said in a sympathetic tone, brushing her tears away with a hoof and handing Pinkie the letter. Pinkie stared down at the tear-blurred words. Dear Pinkie, you showed me that I could still smile. Thank you. Never stop smiling. It was signed with a sun, with golden rays coming off it, a big smile and sunglasses. Pinkie looked up from the letter to the still form of Sunshine as the nurse drew the sheet up over him, and she felt her heart break all over again. 2 days later, found Pinkie Pie laying in the grass at the foot of a freshly dug grave. The small group of ponies who attended the funeral had already left and she was here, taking her time alone to say goodbye properly. A single red balloon had been tied to a stake at the end of the grave, bobbing cheery and bright in the sunlight.
It's foreshadowing the sequel. It.
Tears slipped down Pinkie's face, and she stared at the freshly turned earth that represented her first friend, and his words echoed in the back of her mind. The doctors say I'll be leaving in a few days. I'll be able to fly with my mother and father. Pain tore at her heart as she remembered his words. He had lied to her, just so he could see her continue to smile. And she hated him for that. She would never forgive him. Kidding, it doesn't say that. A simple smile. An orphan dying alone in the world with no one to help them but his nurse. And she had given him a smile. She had made him smile, because sometimes a smile was all you have. Lying on the grass at the foot of her friend's grave, watching a balloon cheerily mocking the somber setting, she began to sing. You got this, buddy. You got this. I had to do it last time.
I am here to say I'm gonna make you smile and I'll brighten up your day. It doesn't matter now if you are sad or blue, 'cause cheering up my friend is just what Pinkie's here to do.
So yeah, that's a song from the show, and it sounds nothing like that.
Yeah, it does. I've heard the song, so I sang it perfectly.
Fantastic job. And there, in the rain, choking out a song in between sobs for her lost friend Sunshine, Pinkie smiled. The end. Whew. Man, that was sad.
Oh, that's why Pinkie Smiles. By Anonymous Pegasus.
So it was.
That was a good story.
It really was. I liked it. That was sad. It was that ending there. Well, not the ending of this, but the... Alright, so spoilers for the other Pinkie Pie fanfiction that we've read. One Heart's Warming Eve. Very, very similar. Both have Pinkie watching someone die.
Did it have that?
Yeah, it did. It was sad.
Oh, yeah, it did.
Man, you gotta re-listen to that episode. It's great.
I forgot about the ending.
Although I suppose that's probably what most sad Pinkie Pie stories are about.
Because that's just in character.
Yeah. Pinkie Pie just watches so many people die. It's rough.
This happens all the time in the show. She doesn't want it to, but it does.
That's depressing. No, it makes sense, you know, just it works with her character because she's all about making others happy and stuff like that, and yeah, it wouldn't do much for her to be in the dying situation.
Yeah, no one would care. Who would you put in there? Twilight? Why would Twilight be at the hospital with Pinkie Pie? She has better things to do.
Twilight would be the main character of that story rather than Pinkie.
Yeah, she'd have to be the one dying.
Yeah.
Twilight finds out Pinkie Pie has cancer, so she's like, oh yeah, I'll get a worse cancer.
That's... I liked it. Probably in my top 10 fanfics that we've read. Maybe even top 5, who knows. I really liked it. But I also really like a lot of the death ones that we read.
Yeah, I feel like this one was definitely really good, especially because something I forgot to mention. We were doing this because it's International Pinkie Day, Pinkie Pie Appreciation Day. So we gave her own... We found a fic that focused more on Pinkie and her feelings than the other fics did. And I think that this fic definitely fit that bill.
Yeah. And a note to people, Pinkie Pie Day is actually on October 7th, so that gives you a kind of a clear view of how long ago we've recorded this.
Bruh. That's an actual day.
Uh-huh. It is.
You know, she deserves her day.
Like,
I'll give
all
it to
the
her.
characters have a day.
Although there were multiple punctuation and grammatical errors that surprised me because the level of like sophistication in the writing would make me think that they would proofread it a little better.
Yeah, that also surprised me.
And their ability to tell a dark story this well made them seem more mature, you know? um but you know, it's easy to look past. Still made it a really good story. Probably I want to give it like an 8 out of 10.
It's a good number. I would say if I had to give it a number, well, that's difficult now that I think about it. You know what? I'll tell you later. Great job, Anonymous Pegasus. Perhaps you'll see this episode and want us to take it down. Because how dare we make fun of your very sad story?
But I'd imagine they won't because this was from 2012, right?
I mean, they were last seen on the site 3 hours ago.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do another of their stories at some point.
Yeah. Oh, maybe I have read this or heard this before because there was a reading by Dr. Wolf. That's interesting.
Of Why Pinkie Smiles?
Yeah.
Oh. Pre-reader?
Whoops, my bad. All right, folks. We should probably wrap this up then.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Great job by Anonymous Pegasus. Go down into the description and like it if you haven't already, because it deserves it. Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye. But what happens?
Okay, I just want to say though that we like totally called this, like, and Pinkie didn't, so we're much better detectives than Pinkie.
We're basically clairvoyants compared to Pinkie.
We're basically gods.
We should rule Ponyville.
Why stop at Ponyville? Why not all of Equestria?